and gentlemen, analysts and associates, welcome to your Managing Director Secretary's favorite podcast, the Big Swinging Decks Podcast by Litquidity and Moran. This is not financial advice. You'd be a bottom bucket analyst to make investment decisions based on what is discussed on this show.
Welcome back to another edition of Big Swinging Decks. Lit, as always, what's going on? How the hell are you? What's new?
It's intern season. Carl is lacking on his work. There's a lot going on. Probably working a lot more than I did in banking, but we'll get through it. How are you?
I'm good. I was in Texas last week where it was 105 degrees. I was down with CoinFlex at Consensus in Austin, and it was great because I got to go into a rural Texas, I guess not rural, Round Rock, Texas, but a poker hall for the first time ever to watch a high-stakes poker game. So I was quite out of my league because I have no idea how to play poker. So that was fun, entertaining, but it's good to be back in New York.
Yeah, well, that's great. I wish I could have been there. I was at a wedding for a good friend of mine, and we had a pretty good time. So, it took a couple days to recover from all the drinking we had.
So, Lit, initially, we were going to record an episode on mental health because June is Men's Mental Health Awareness Month. But we decided to push that. It is a mouthful. It is, and I think I just kind of superfluously added the awareness portion to it, but I don't know what the official title is. So we were going to do that, but we decided to push that off until a few weeks from now because there's something that we wanted to talk about that's been going on and raging on the Wall Street Oasis forum that we know and love. Lit, what are we going to be talking about today?
I mean, you're the expert on this since you like to check out Wall Street Oasis. But this morning, I got a DM from someone saying, "Yo, have you seen what's going down on Wall Street Oasis about the Indiana University Kelley admissions? Some shit about like students lying about their diversity, and they got accepted into elite boutiques, and now it somehow came out and there's some sort of scandal." So, Mark, I don't know. You've spent some time there and digging through the threads.
I've spent probably 35 minutes reading into this, and so we take this time so you guys don't have to. So we're gonna do a shorter episode targeting 30 minutes. So our producer Red cut us off at 30 minutes because we want to see how this performs. So let us know if you guys like the shorter episodes because we've been running long a little bit in our previous ones. So from my understanding, essentially what's going on is, I was alerted to this too from your story, and so went directly to the source on the forum of Wall Street Oasis. And so there have been a few different threads relating to this, but essentially it has been reported as far back as May of this year about the Indiana University Kelley School of Business. It's a school that I would say most people think is a non-target, but it places fairly well in finance. And I mean, it has a very good reputation. Indiana, it's a good school. Right? Nothing bad to say about it.
Oh, Mark, and I also had this meme where I shouted them out, and everyone's like, "Yo, IU, stand up!" So. It was about all the New York City interns about to tear it up.
Oh, yeah, I remember that one. Yeah, that was a good one.
Yeah.
So it's a good school, has a very good reputation on Wall Street. I mean, I remember when I was at Lazard, the best analyst in the healthcare group was a kid who went to Indiana. And, it's something that the very good reputation. So recently in May, the first instance of this was reported that apparently, and this is all alleged, and this is also, I guess, too, an episode where we're representing our own perspectives, me as a white male. And, Lit, I think oftentimes people assume that you are one too. You are not. Do you want to comment on anything vaguely about that? But I just think it's important to let people know, that you're not another clone of me.
Yeah, I am not another clone of Mark, but I'll just say, I can't speak from perspective of minority group. So let's just leave it there and everyone else can keep guessing. But, over the years, it has been fun for a lot of people to assume, I'm another like Chad who grew up in fucking Connecticut and, dad's a hedge fund manager and, I got everything fed in the silver spoon, which is not the case. So just putting that out there for a little perspective in what we're about to discuss.
Yeah, I had a tweet the other day where it was like a screenshot of the price of cum rocket this year, and it went up like the first day of the year and then didn't go up. It just directly down as the rest of crypto has. So I was like, really shouldn't have converted my trust fund into cum rocket on January 1. And people were replying me like, getting angry about it. It's like, I don't have a trust fund. I never had one. That's why this joke's funny. But, people want to, and that's the thing with it.
That's Twitter for you. Yeah.
Yeah, right. Well, we can get into me pissing Twitter off, this ESG Twitter off this week.
Yeah. That'll be for mental health episode next one. So.
Well, I mean, I think it may intertwine because, virtue signaling is something like this is a debate that people feel very, they get emotional when this comes on both sides of any type of diversity debate. So, we'll discuss this in a way that, is obviously going to be influenced by our own thoughts and perspectives and, upbringings and everything that's gone into getting us here. But, it's something I think the more. And this is with anything, the more that one side can listen to another side rather than just assuming, the worst intent in someone and, really trying to have a constructive dialogue, the better things go. So we're going to be talking about diversity and, a bunch of other related factors in the financial industry in this. So let's take it from there. Are there any portions of kind of the backstory that stick out to you, or how do you want to run through this chronologically? How do we want to do it?
You said you spent 35 minutes on this thread. Can you tell us a little bit about the situation?
I probably spent more like an hour and a half unfocused, but for humor's sake, it was 35 minutes. So, look, basically, the Kelley School of Business, that was very good, and I want to drop this little fact, but the chairman, this Kelley guy, was the chairman of Steak and Shake, and he donated $23 million in 1997, hence the name. So I thought that was interesting. So I start off there, the ground level of primary research. So there was an individual who he reportedly got a job at an elite boutique who was not part of a diverse group, yet claimed that. And based off of, looks and personal knowledge of classmates, this individual didn't fit the bill. So a classmate made, I guess he did a burner email. I'm not sure how he dealt with the kind of name of where the email was coming from, but he somehow convinced this individual who's in question to reply to this email. But the guy faked that he was HR at this elite boutique. And, I guess asked some questions about the diversity or accused him of, misrepresenting the group that he was part of and his heritage. And so this individual replies.
Sorry, what you're saying that a fake HR representative found out that a guy who got an offer is lying?
So it was a classmate of the individual, right? So this classmate made a fake email address and then sent kind of a baiting email that got this kid's response. So then he screenshots the response, and that's what's been making its way around the forums and into your DMs.
Got it. Okay, that makes more sense and makes it even more wild. Okay,
right? Because it took a while for me to understand. Because it's like, one, how would this get out there on the internet, right? And then two, the bigger question to me though is, how does he fall for this? Because there's no way that they're sending this email, the classmate who's 20, 21, and getting the exact name of the email of this elite boutique, right?
It was probably like coming from molishr@gmail.com.
Yeah, right. Exactly. Yeah. and so that's funny. So this kid, he goes into his response, and we're going to talk about the email in a bit, but basically, it is just an all around, grade A work of bullshit. And he's going into describing that generations removed, that because that he's part of this group because generations ago they were there, but yet he was saying that he's always identified as another group until then, that that he was bullied for his race, so then he decided to identify with this other group, which is also the one that's diverse versus the one that he previously identified with. Talking about everything going back to origin, all of this stuff. And I'm being kind of vague when I talk about it, because I know one thing I've learned is that I misspeak a lot in terms of words that I'm probably not as well versed as I should be in talking about them. Yeah, I walk a fine line, right? So essentially the gist of it is you're reading this and it's like, you either are, if you're saying that you're part of a diverse class, you either are or you're not. And, the whole backstory of this is it's easier to go through, and get a job on Wall Street oftentimes if you're, part of a program that's selectively looking for people, right? And we can get into the kind of systemic and socioeconomic factors that, why there's different opinions of this. But let's focus on this kid. So he does this, and then he apparently has just started the internship. But then it comes out that there's other people at Kelley doing this. And essentially, like, someone in a thread on Wall Street Oasis went and they just did bullets of like the 5 or so kids off the top of their heads that had faked this. And so it seems like it's a problem in the financial industry. And like, what do you think about this, both specifically as it relates to what's going on at Kelley, but also your thoughts on, why this is going on and how to fix something like this?
Oh, yeah. So I'm going to also try to watch my words on this one. Yeah. But I will say that I think it's interesting that it's happening at Kelley because, as the school at large is probably top 60 or 70 or whatever in the nation, but somehow have a strong presence on Wall Street through this investment banking workshop program that, apparently places well. And so I think now this kind of muddies that reputation if the allegations are true. But it's like, look, people are trying to find ways to get into a very tough industry where hiring practices are opaque and tend to rely on nepotism and also, just like legacy shit, and also happens in college too. So I kind of understand why people would be desperate and get into those situations. I mean, it's like, if it works, hey, it works. It's fucked up, but like, it's just, a fucked up game to begin with. So I don't encourage it, but it's like, it's bound to happen. The same way that whole college admission scandal at USC and these other schools, like, you have these parents who obviously care about their kids, but they're taking away things from truly disadvantaged folks. So it's like, it's just human psychology wanting to get ahead. And, it's like these people are probably competing against people who come from wealthy backgrounds, who have, family members in the industry and probably have it easier. So it's tough, right? And so it's 4 groups that you have here, right? You have the privileged non-minorities, you have the privileged minorities, you have the non-privileged minorities, and then I forget the fourth one, non-privileged non-minorities. So it is like, you have this situation where the somewhat privileged non-minorities are using something to get ahead. And, it's like, where does this fall in this entire ranking of disadvantagedness and, HR numbers games and stuff? And it's it's hard to put it into words because, like, I don't want it to seem like I don't care about it, but it's kind of like, it's such a game where, like, what's the right quota? What truly qualifies someone as being disadvantaged? Is it just the color of their skin, or is it truly like, they're poor? And it's just such a hard thing to explain, and no one can really give, a clear cut answer. And like, every firm has a different way of approaching it, and it might be virtue signaling too, as something you are also very on top of.
Very anti. I'm a very, very anti virtue signaling person. No, I think you said that well, and I think anytime something like this, diversity programs are brought up, you're always going to have the two kind of extremes who are the loudest of this, right? And you touched on it because you have both kind of race, which is impacted by so many structural and societal systemic issues going back to prior to the Revolutionary War, right? And so then, you'll take someone on the other side and they'll say, oh, okay, well, despite so-and-so, being black, they went to, Andover
Exeter,
and then Harvard.
yeah.
Right.
Yeah,
and
Princeton,
so, so then, Phil from West Virginia deserves, to be the actual diverse one because he's poor. And so, it's kind of just everything will be pit, from one extreme. So I think with this, it's like, it's important to acknowledge both of those, that the socioeconomic diversity, especially with something in finance, is so important because, it doesn't really matter your race at all, because if you didn't, from starting even in high school, and then go to the right college, then get involved in the right clubs and all these things and learn to speak the language, you were already disadvantaged at a start, from the start rather. And I actually have a friend who I did my JD MBA with, and he's a black guy. His name's Alfonso, and he started this company called Enrich. And essentially what they're trying to do is it's founded, so he went to Amherst for undergrad, and it's founded by him and one of his buddies. And so they're trying to kind of build diverse talent pipelines for companies. But the problem with that is that, you have to start from essentially the day someone walks into college, if you're going to be able to create some type of program that can be replicated to really help put these opportunities. So, I do think it would be, an oversight to more than oversight, but it would definitely be disingenuous to kind of just say, oh, well, if you don't get the right grades in college, then, you're not going to get a job on Wall Street, because there's so many other factors that go into it.
Yeah. And to your point on, you have to really start young and be introduced to it and speak the language. It goes back to, like the same thing again, where you can be someone who is maybe not a minority, and you're poor and you just didn't grow up around this industry, and it's like, how do you really break into something like this? And it's kind of like, I would say, at least for me, speaking from experience growing up, it was just a very abstract thing to think about, high finance, on like trading and what are you actually doing to improve society. And then when you think about like immigrant parents, right, like the things that they teach you to go to is towards engineering, into law, into medicine, and there you kind of understand what's going on. But and there's obviously better representation there, since I believe, like, I don't want to speak on behalf of the other industries, but that's, pretty merit based, like law school, right? You have to get a good LSAT a score, MCAT for medical school, and engineering's just fucking, hard as shit with all the math and science classes you have to take. And so that's kind of, you like, what's really going to drive someone from a, lower class upbringing to want to speak about EBITDA and fucking M&A of like major corporations.
So we're getting into then how on the other side too, you can also claim, and when I say sides, I don't even know what side I'm on right now. It's just I'm trying to hit all the extremes so we can start at the outside and then work inwards on this argument. Something I learned actually, because I majored in finance and sociology. So the sociology one throws people for a loop a little bit, because you wouldn't assume that about me. But, we're trying to, right? Yeah, I know. It's a little different than it appears.
Yeah, your career aspirations were either Credit Suisse or Starbucks, but
the unionized Starbucks, okay, the unionized one. It's funny though, because when I was in college, even being a finance major, I still, I didn't come from a family who anyone was a banker. I didn't know anyone who worked on Wall Street and stuff. And then there was just like a process of just what everyone was doing in these clubs. I'm like, nah, that's for nerds. Like, I'm just gonna go like barely attend class and run track. So I did that, but then I ultimately figured it it out. But, I didn't know a lot of that stuff because, like, who knows what the hell EBITDA is if your dad didn't work on Wall Street or your mother. And so also I just want to give a quick shout out that apparently, there's a woman who unfortunately at Goldman was bullied and on the trading floor one time when she was going to go breastfeed, that one of the traders mooted her. And I just really think that David Solomon needs to kind of start keeping a much better culture for today's modern workforce. So hopefully he listens. I know he's a big listener. He's a big shareholder. So
big shareholder.
Loves us. But so then the interesting thing I think about with this too is that on Wall Street Oasis, it started getting censored and it wouldn't appear in searches. People kept reposting it. And when I say it's a screenshot of the actual letter. And I don't know if we actually need to read any quotes from it or anything, but because I think it's the general idea that we want to be speaking of. So
wait. But can I just give a pretty factual rundown of just the kid's background?
Okay.
So just reading this here. Okay, the guy says that his mother is Asian and her family grew up in varying parts of India. Then the grandparents of the dad's sides and his ancestors were from a tribe in Ghana, Africa.
Okay.
And so from that, he just basically applied as an African to the firm because he felt very culturally in tune with the African origin, even though that was a couple of generations removed. And so that's what's in question. I think this one email screenshot is of someone who is.
So I'm kind of confused. What does that mean? In your opinion.
So here's the technicality where the person looks Indian and I believe has an Indian last name. Okay. And now when you think of minorities, I would think the average American would consider, an Indian or Asian American rather, right? Because Indians are Asian, to be a minority. But for the purposes of Wall Street recruiting, you have Asian Americans and just people from Asian origins, right? That includes China and Japan and whatnot, right? To be excluded from these diversity metrics. So I think he was using the African label, despite coming across and presenting as Indian and having an Indian last name to gain that advantage and get the job. And so it's that's a whole monster that even went up to Harvard, right? Their admissions scandal and discriminating against Asians. And so that's kind of where do you draw the line on who is a minority
and how far you can extend it?
Exactly.
And you're always going to run into these problems. And one thing that I wanted to say is that I think this is something, all of these kind of societal structures and essentially the systemic things that get someone to Wall Street, they start at a young age. And so just having a diversity program isn't necessarily going to be the thing that makes the most difference because, a kid who goes to Wharton and regardless of what race they are is going to be better prepared than a kid who goes to NC State, right? Just for an example. But I thought that Centerview did a really thoughtful thing when I was there, when they created a special program that targeted Morehouse and Spelman. And so those are both HBCUs, historically black colleges or universities in Atlanta. And, Morehouse, it's kind of it's kind of like the preeminent school. It's an all-male school, but Spelman is the all-women's school right across the street. So it's not like a Hampton-Sydney in rural Virginia where there's only guys. And the closest other school is Sweetbriar. That's 45 miles away. Anyway, tangent. But it was very thoughtful because by targeting those schools, which are very elite schools, which are obviously they are HBCUs, so you're checking the diverse thing, but they are schools that it's not all going to be kids from upper class. It's going to be a very, very diverse socioeconomic range range of people. And I think that is that step to target a school specifically like that. And it's a very unique example because it's Morehouse, it's Spelman. If you're aware of those schools, like, you know exactly how good they are and the leaders that they produced. So I've always been kind of continuously impressed by whoever thought of that, because I think it's a way to actually solve, a diversity problem, but also able to really kind of target in some way the socioeconomic side of things and trying to get diversity in more well thought out ways than current programs.
Yeah, makes sense. And I think was it Robert Smith, the founder of Vista Equity Partners, who paid off the Morehouse graduate or the Morehouse graduating class's debt? Yeah, okay, I just saw this. So I think it was from 2019 where he made a gift, to pay up to $34 million of collective debt from them, which, I thought was a pretty cool thing for them, and it really changes the trajectory of the first few years of some people's careers, of like, hey, like, if you don't have to pay off debt, which could take years or even a lifetime depending on what you do and how you pay it down, I think helps to level it out at some capacity.
One important thing that has always stuck out to me too is, so for people who don't know who Vernon Jordan is, he worked at Lazard, and he was a vice chairman there. He recently passed. There's a great documentary on PBS about him, but essentially he was someone who's very involved in the civil rights movement. He was from Atlanta, went to I think it was DePaul, and was the first black student there, and then it really kind of rose his way up through the civil rights movement, and then worked very closely for Bill Clinton. But he at the time of his death, he was working at both Aiken Gump as a lawyer in D.C. and a lobbyist, and then at Lazard too, where he was vice chairman. So very accomplished guy. But he always said at one point, someone had raised the idea of you're not violent in any of these protests, and he said that you can change kind of more in life through the boardroom than you can in other ways. And so his nickname was Rosa Parks of the boardroom, which I just thought was a very interesting approach, where he's a black man in a white man's world for the majority of his time on Wall Street, and all the change that he had. And one time I had lunch with him when I was at Lazard, and it was like a phenomenal experience. It was just to be around like a true civil rights icon like that, not something that happens every day. But I think he's an example of you have to really kind of live in two worlds oftentimes for people who are from a diverse and different backgrounds, and then you come into a place like Wall Street where it's like really cookie cutter when you think about it, with this small world and nepotism and all that, and it's a wild thing to do. So
yeah, no, that's definitely something. And I think with also Goldman Sachs, just to give them credit and what they do, although some of it does tend to be virtue signaling. So we'll come back to virtue signaling, but they did something a few years ago about board diversity. If you recall, it was about female representation in public company boards, and they would not do business with them, or I forget if they would not take them public, or I forget.
It was about a year
but it's
ago.
Without a diverse board member, and I think it was geared towards female representation. So I think that's definitely something that can say, hey, like, if other banks take a stand, or at least like there's some effort to try to diversify the makeup of corporate America, or Wall Street, or even Silicon Valley, like that's it has to be done with something like that, because if left to everyone's kind of primal instinct to be surrounded by people that they are most comfortable with culturally, which tends to be the same race and a background, then you won't see much of it. And the disparity will never kind of close. So,
and I will say that's a great move by Goldman. You know, my thing with virtue signaling, because anyone who follows me on Twitter, they saw that this past week I really pissed off a lot of people in the ESG FinTwit community, which at the end of the day I don't know what that is, and
it's been fun to watch.
Oh my God! I mean, it's just so fun to fight these people. I love it. But basically, I called someone out for virtue signaling, and then someone I was apparently blocked, and I don't even know who this individual was. So I'm like, why am I blocked? Then other people from this ESG community start getting on me. And then it turns into just like personal insults to me. Like my favorite though, it was melted Kendall dipshit. So like I'd sent that to my parents like, "This, how funny is this one?" And so then people, they know who these anonymous accounts are. So people are sending me pictures of who they are, all these things, and I'm just like, listen, I know I'm an easy person not to like from initially, but I would love to like engage in a debate, and we could talk about ESG, because I think it's a whole scam. It's just it's nothing. When the top 10 funds own Exxon, right? Anyway, we can get into that another day. But then it just turns into personal attacks on me, and if I were to ever attack anyone the same way that they did me, I would be canceled immediately. So it's
Mark,
one of these.
Yeah, sorry, not to cut you off, but that just reminded me of the scene in Succession. All right, so season 3, episode 3, very niche.
Oh, wow.
But if you watch the show,
how did you just encyclopedic? Wow, impressive.
I have an encyclopedic mind for meme templates. So anyway, so there's a scene with Kendall Roy, one of the was it protagonists of the show or antagonists, whichever way you look at him and view him. He has a scene in a car where he's like reading good tweets and bad tweets that are written about him on Twitter. So there's like good tweet, bad tweet. So I think like we could do that with you in a different episode, which would be hysterical. Because again, it was very interesting from people's, like devolving from debating, or not even debating, but just like, all right, what's ESG to, hey, you're a Ken doll dipshit, whatever, and here's
and it's like your fucking trust fund your dad got you into school, you blah blah blah, like what bank did your dad? And it's like, yeah, my dad was in the fucking military like for 22 years, like fuck off, next insult. And it's like, okay, next.
Yeah.
There was this post on Instagram that I shared, and it was kind of something of the woke corporate checklist, and it was like talk about diversity, bring in outside firms to talk about diversity, and those were checks, and then it was along the lines of actually make any changes, nothing. Have diverse boards, nothing. Diverse C-suites, nothing. And I think that's the thing, though. If you're going to talk about diversity, be about diversity and really make an effort to go about it and show that your workforce is representative of the broader, society's makeup and demographics. And I just don't see that going on with a lot of these things. But I think this is a really fascinating debate, right? And I mean, well, it's not necessarily a debate. It's a very fascinating topic, and I would love to be able to bring some people on as guests and to talk about this more, about diversity in finance, what can be done about it, what changes can we make that are aspirational and practical. So if anyone who's listening knows good people to reach out to, we would greatly appreciate that in the DMs. But I think that could be a very beneficial discussion, especially when you think about a lot of our audience for this podcast, kids in college who are going through this process right now and are seeing, these IU Kelley threads and all that stuff.
But also people that actually are living it right now too, that, are experiencing it and just like can opine on this and like really relate to it on a very deep level. So, we also have a pretty good pipeline of guests coming on soon. And I think we can, after this episode, ask some of these topics that I think will be pretty interesting and pretty timely. And, one last thing, just to touch upon this whole virtue signaling thing. There's this meme that always comes around every June where all the firms are changing their corporate logos to like the rainbow pride ones. And it's always, it's funny, but also kind of like sad and not surprising when you look at like BMW, for example, or Cisco. I'm just like, I pulled one up here. So if you look at like the US and any other like Western country accounts for that brand, they all changed it to the pride flag. And then the Middle East ones are always unchanged for the month of June. And it's like, where do you draw the line there? Why not just,
We'll be courageous where it's easy, but where it would actually potentially create a meaningful dialogue in the Middle East, no, we won't do that because that will affect our business interests. And that's the entire fucking problem with all this. Like that you can go and say where it's easy to do, I'm supportive of gay people, I'm supportive of transgender people, I'm doing all of this. Where it's not easy to do and you potentially could, destroy a business there, they don't do it. It's just it's the whole idea of just kind of being essentially it's like this moral soapbox of self-promotion that these people have, and it's like when you're a CEO and you're like, oh, look at our inclusive workforce. It's like, yeah, buddy, like how comfortable do people feel talking to you about diversity? As a white male, like which I get, and it's something that I think more people have to stand up and say, just these the virtue signaling and just these programs that are put into place, if they're not actually affecting change, then it should be changed, and programs should be put into place that do. And it's going to be idiosyncratic to every bank, but it's something that I think the dialogue just has to be much more realistic, much more in the middle rather than the extremes, and everyone realize that there are points to be made on both sides. And I mean, I don't think we offended many people with what we just said over the past 35, 40 minutes. But, if you are offended or you feel that we are talking about this in the wrong way, that's because of our especially me, I'll speak for myself, my ignorance with anything. Feel free to reach out. Like, I'm always happy to take constructive criticism or just tweet at me, whatever, make it funny. But that's
the thing where it's, look, I mean, we're coming from a very sincere background to have dialogue. And look, I mean, I personally didn't see anything that you said that was offensive, and you're very quick to acknowledge where you might be, and you don't want to come across that you're not aware of that. And so it's like, look, I mean, people just ignore that. And I think with social media, everyone just thinks the worst and projects the worst on people without knowing where they're coming from, and that's what devolves into Twitter being a shithole for debate. So I just worry about with any of this stuff where it's so easy to clip 3 words that one of us says and then just say go from there and put it out there. So I mean, we're doing something that, because of what we're doing now, where we can say things about Wall Street and the culture that no one else can, because at the end of the day we're employing ourselves. So we have a duty to do this. But I think it's one of these things that let us know, for people who are listening, let us know how we can push this dialogue further. And I'm sure that we would have no issue if we had constructive things to say that were helpful to certain banks, to set up a CEO meeting and to talk through this and to be able to bring someone else's idea to light. So we're happy to be the megaphone for anyone who has great ideas with how we can usher this along and advance the conversation. Amen, brother.
Amen. And on that one, let's end it. Reach out to us with any suggestions, and then let's do the tweet one soon. That'll be funny to just. But okay, here's what it's going to be. You do tweets on me. I'll do tweets on you though.
Ooh.
Terminally online version. Yeah. That'll be good.
Yeah, I'd love that.
This has been Big Swinging Decks by Litquidity with your hosts, Lit and Mark Moran. This is a Red Rock Music podcast. Our executive producer is Red Yoakum. Our associate producer is Emma Martins. For more, follow us on Instagram at Litquidity and at It's Mark Moran, or visit the official website, litquidity.co. So tune in weekly to your Managing Director Secretary's favorite podcast, available wherever you listen to podcasts.